link here. What do you want me to say about it?
Pony, we're live on the stream, buddy. Just tweet
Oh.
out the link. Take your time. It's all good. I'm in Detroit. It's First and Pod. We're on the Scores YouTube page. We're going to be on YouTube pages all throughout Odyssey. I'm at Odyssey Radio Row at a Buffalo Wild Wings. I've had a couple of celebratory beers because the Bears won the draft. They got Caleb Williams and Rome Odunze. They've worked out together already with Keenan Allen and DJ Moore and Caleb Williams throwing him the ball. They threw
just time out for a second here, okay? This is what happened. Let's just give everybody a behind-the-scenes rundown of what went on here. You went on Cowherd's podcast, and then you started doing shots as soon as you were done. So there was a high level of sobriety when I saw you with John Middlecoff about a half hour ago. And ever since then, you've been doing like flaming Dr. Peppers and stuff.
So you're going to get my best takes.
We're getting half in the bag, Danny Parkins, right now.
Rome.
3 sheets to the wind on the YouTube page and First and Pod.
Rome Odunze, my friend.
And I still cannot get this link out, by the way.
Okay, just copy and paste it into a tweet, Big Shot. It's not that hard. And here's the point, Pony. You said this would be an A if it happened, and it happened. Yep. You said he reminded you of Larry Fitzgerald. I like the Devontae Adams comp. Maybe it's Drake London. Regardless, this is a very, very, very talented receiver to pair with one of the most talented quarterback prospects you and I have ever seen in our lifetime. Caleb Williams, a complete sure thing as a prospect if there is such a thing.
I don't know. I don't agree with that, but I'm not going to rain on your parade here.
What's the downside?
Well, I can't shake the Notre Dame game. That's the game of all his games last year I watched the most closely.
There were still impressive things in that game. Guys have bad games. It's okay.
Well, there weren't, and let's not sugarcoat it. He was awful in that game.
He was awful.
Yes. So right, and that's the game I watched the closest. So I'm scarred by it. But you have 20 other games you can look at and see wild plays and everything else. The game
I can give you a 46-1 touchdown to interception ratio in the red zone the last 2 years. I can give you 0 interceptions on third or fourth down the last 2 years on 199 pass attempts. I could give you no one in college football has more touchdowns the last 3 years. He had 120. Only Bo Nix and Sam Hartman had over 100. I mean, this guy is an excellent prospect walking into an excellent situation, and he just added an excellent wide receiver.
Well, yeah, that's why there's no excuses. I mean, the Bears, in my opinion, I believe the win total was set before the draft at 8.5. They need to be a winning team. If they don't win 9 games or 10 games and make the playoffs, because the Vikings have a quarterback issue.
Massive disappointment.
Yeah, right. The Packers
and
Lions
disappointment.
Yeah, I mean, I think Eberflus will get fired if they don't make the playoffs this year, unless like Caleb Williams looks like God and everything. But if everything else goes bad, he's going to get blamed for it because he's a defensive coach. So
yeah, I mean, the GM loves him and gave him a huge ringing endorsement. Things would have to go very, very poorly in order for him to get fired. There's a ton of pressure on Shane Waldron, but I think this team is in an excellent situation. Of course, I'm a little biased, but let's be honest here. This is an incredible quarterback prospect going into a crazy situation. The Bears, my entire lifetime, it was said that wide receivers are where Chicago is where wide receivers go to die. The Bears franchise leader in receiving yards. Do you know it?
It's not Brandon Marshall, is it?
It is not.
Is it Willie Gault?
It is not. It is Johnny Morris. Who has just over 5,000 receiving yards. 5,000, Pony. 5,000.
Well,
for a career receiving yards leader.
Before his rookie contract is up. He should be the Bears' leading receiver.
Dude, they have the best wide receiver trio in the NFL.
They do. I don't disagree with that.
Allen and Moore is a top 3 or 4 duo. They have the best trio in the NFL. But let's move on because then there was a run on 2 quarterbacks here. You and I both would have taken Drake May over Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels goes 2, Drake May goes 3. What do you think the difference was for Washington with Daniels?
Apparently that Top Golf visit where Top Golf is not a sponsor of our show yet, but it is very expensive. So maybe those guys were wined and dined there and very impressed by the chicken tender layout and potato skins and hitting golf balls into targets. But what impressed them, I'll go back to what was said on the broadcast tonight, that he had the best 2023 tape of any quarterback. Caleb Williams had a better career, the Heisman Trophy winner the year before. Daniels had the best QBR in college football last year. He won the Heisman Trophy. He's the only quarterback in college football history, I believe, with 12,000 passing yards and 3,000 rushing yards. So what he did with Neighbors and what he did with Thomas Jr. and what he did in that Brian Kelly system, that offense there, is what got him to the number 2 pick from what would have been a day 3 selection had he come out of college the year before. So that was the difference. Plus, Drake May had a difficult, trying season at times. His top wide receiver was suspended. His top wide receiver from the year before got drafted by the Colts. He was hit or miss, hot and cold. And so you add that up. And I think the Commanders took another RG3, except I think this guy's kind of a poor man's version of RG3, in my opinion. I would have taken May. I still think May will I think May will still end up being the best quarterback from this draft, even though he probably is in a situation where quarterbacks do go to die.
Yeah, I don't think he'll be better than Caleb.
Offensive line.
Yeah, I don't think he'll be better than Caleb, but let's go on the graphic to May. Why I would have taken May is, so you talk about how the Notre Dame game stuck out with you on the negative side. The Duke game stuck out with me on the positive side for Drake May. It was unbelievable playmaking, and a lot of it was unconventional. Like, dude just figured out a way to make plays. And for Daniels, he makes a lot of plays. He's crazy accurate, but there's not a ton of stuff that's off schedule and improvisational. And that's the type of thing that gives you a really high ceiling in the NFL. I know Drake May needs to work on his footwork and all that sort of stuff, but if they do build around him correctly, that dude's just a baller. And he can throw the ball over the mountain like Uncle Rico. So I think that with the right coaching and the right guys around him, it can take some time. But I do think that the Josh Allen and Justin Herbert comps there. Obviously, Allen, it took him 2 years to start showing real progress in his 3rd year when they gave him Diggs. He had good coaching from Dable. Was great instantly, but he had Keenan Allen and Mike Williams and others around him in LA. So it's going to have to be most likely the Josh Allen route. I would not play Drake May if I was New England for the vast majority of this year. Teams seem to not do that very often, but I would not play him. I would play Jacoby Brissett, work on the footwork, be bad, and give him a top 10 player either on the line or at receiver in next year's draft. I would not play Drake May if I was New England.
Mel Kiper said, just like you there, he has a lot of Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert irritates me sometimes because he gets universally praised for never having won anything and shrinking in some big moments. If there's Justin Herbert in this guy, he should have been the number 2 pick over Daniels. So I like him a lot. And I think you're right. He'll do well to wait behind Jacoby Brissett for a while there. Put him on the Jordan Love plan. All right. Marvin Harrison Jr. went 4th here. Danny, I think he's going to be an all-time great, just like his old man. I like the point that his numbers stayed the same. It was static production from C.J. Stroud to Kyle McCord, who is now at our alma mater. So the quarterback play goes from potentially the best quarterback under 25 years old in the sport to a player that is now at our alma mater, and the numbers did not diminish whatsoever.
I loved that Arizona didn't trade down. I thought that they were a prime trade down candidate, even though they had a ton of draft picks, just because of how much they moved around last year. And their GM seems to be very creative, but they were just like, no, we're going to take a guy who we know is going to be awesome. There's basically no scenario that exists in which Marvin Harrison Jr. is not excellent. And so they just said, we'll take the best non-quarterback in the draft. Maybe he's the best player in the draft. It's obviously in play, despite the fact that I want that to be Caleb Williams. Adding blue chip players is never a bad thing. And they have so many draft picks, they really didn't need to trade down. They probably only would have done it if they would have been blown away for a QB. And we'll get to the QB situation here in a few minutes. But I there's no way to give this pick anything other than an A. He's an excellent player, and it's a strong pick. Joe Alt to the Chargers with the 5th overall pick. Man, Harbaugh's got it tight. This is a Harbaugh pick. They have Rashawn Slater. And it did not faze him that they lost Keenan Allen and Malik Neighbors was there. I know you don't like Alt, but Harbaugh really does want to pound the rock and be dominant up front. I know a lot of people were saying this was going to be the thing based on the style. I know that people were mocking J.C. Latham to them today, and the odds maker said that. So people were on it that Harbaugh was going to take an offensive lineman. Okay. I'm surprised. I would not have done it. I would have taken Neighbors.
He's got an old school way of wanting to build a football team, and he decided to go with a player who's not even a blindside protector and has played exclusively left tackle at Notre Dame the last couple of years. He elected to do that instead of getting weapons for his elite quarterback, for his star quarterback. And it's just, hey, I guess it proves that, like, if you give a quarterback the option, is he's going to choose protection over the guys he's throwing the ball to. I think it's such a milquetoast pick. I think it's such a, like, let's find the high floor guy and he's safe, even though he's going to be playing out of position. And let's just make sure for the first time in his career that Justin Herbert doesn't get murdered and we're not dealing with, like, ribs puncturing organs and him, like, having fingers that are bent the wrong way, like Brian Baldinger or whatever. Like, let's do that, which I get, but you passed, in my opinion, on a potentially transcendent player to take a guy who projects to me, like, just because this will resonate with you. It's a different position, but it's like you took the Cody Whitehair of offensive tackles. You took a guy who you're like, oh, he's solid and we never have to worry about him, but you're never going to act like he's great. I don't think they got a great player with this pick. I think they got a solid player there.
They need to with the 5th overall pick, but I respect a coach who has a type, even when he goes from the Big Ten to the AFC West, where he has to keep up with Patrick Mahomes if he wants to win. But you keep Herbert upright, maybe he's good enough. I certainly think that he is, that he can make a lot of guys good. Malik Neighbors will both give this an A+. I mean, you called him that if he goes to New York, he's going to be Odell Beckham Jr. So he goes to New York, and he's probably going to have a massive commercial appeal there.
Yeah, and I respect the Giants for doing this, because now it makes the decision-making process with Daniel Jones, I believe, easier. You give him a weapon. They have not had a 1,000-yard receiver since OBJ left. That's how, disgusting the wide receiver play has been for the Giants. We don't know what's going on with Darren Waller. He's got all personal life issues now again, apparently. And so you can get out of the contract with Jones after this year. So it's put up or shut up time for him. I get it. The quarterback crop, at least on the surface, does not look as promising next year. But I like taking the guy who was more productive than Jamar Chase and Jefferson in college and is faster. Danny, the splits on him speed-wise are Tyreek Hill-esque.
Dude, hey, listen, the guys who can take a slant 6 yards and take it 60 is a quarterback's best friend. And that guy has that all over his tape. His yards after the catch is ridiculous.
Right.
So I basically see no way that he busts. I love the pick. I was going nuts when the Titans pick came in and they passed on Odunze.
Because they got caught with their pants down is what happened here. They should have traded back. They should have just let the clock run. They should have taken it down to 1 second here. They just went with Latham because they thought all along that Alt would be there. He was not. And they're like, oh, crap, we still need an offensive lineman.
But it's not like Alt went 6. It's not like Alt went 6.
You had time.
You had plenty of time if your theory is correct. Like, I get you. People like him. He shot up boards. I don't think that
he did not shoot up boards. No.
You're right. He shot up on the odds makers today, and Peter Schrager, who does the sourced mock draft, put him up really high. He put him at 5th to the Chargers.
Right, but that was the only team in the top 10 that he was linked to was LA. No other team would have taken.
But one thing that we do every year in the draft 10, other than the mock drafts are this, and then a team did good if a guy who was mocked at 13th, they get him at 10. And if the guy was mocked at 9 and you take him at, at 6, you overdrafted him. Or it could be that the mock drafters are wrong. So taking an offensive lineman to protect Levis is one thing, but I am just they traded away A.J. Brown. He ends up being amazing. Like investing, I don't know why modern teams don't figure out that, or that GMs don't figure out in the modern NFL, skill position players are more impactful than blockers. They just are. They're more impactful.
And there's things on Latham's tape to not love. I mean, he was a huge, in fact, as far as like college or high school prospects go, he was rated ahead nationally. He was rated ahead of Caleb Williams. Among the draft eligible guys in this class, he was thought to be the best offensive lineman. He never moved to left tackle. He stayed at right tackle the entire time. He's a gigantic athletic human being, and he was good at Alabama, but there's definitely the sentiment that he left meat on the bone there, and I just wonder if he's ever going to get to that level.
All right, let's get to the most interesting pick of the draft. Michael Penix Jr., Brian Baldinger called it on this show.
Insane.
An insane
2 years in a row, I feel like we were ahead of everybody on Atlanta's insane, wild pick.
Listen, I think this is a ridiculous pick because...
But it didn't seem as crazy to us in terms of like, oh my God, they did this, because I was thinking about what Baldy said to us 2 weeks ago.
Of course, but I disagreed with it when he said it. But the logic is pretty simple. The logic is they're going to be really good with Kirk Cousins, so they're not going to have an opportunity to draft in the top 10 for a long time, and they don't want to ever be in the position to draft this high again, so they want a quarterback succession plan. But they have the old quarterback that's coming off the injury that they gave $100 million guaranteed to, and they just drafted the old quarterback in the draft who's got a significant injury history. Like Michael Penix Jr., he's going to not start in the NFL until he's 26 years old. This is a very unique situation.
That's a great point by you. They did not take the developmental 21-year-old quarterback, Mitch Trubisky, who only started 1 year. Yeah, that part of it is really astounding and stupefying.
They must. I mean, and Penix can't play this year or next year unless Cousins get hurt. They gave him $100 million guaranteed.
Danny, in an ideal world, he doesn't play for 4 years.
Then it's a terrible pick.
Hold on a second.
Then it is a terrible pick.
You didn't sign Kirk Cousins to a fully guaranteed contract, thinking by the end of it there's going to be another guy you want to play ahead of him. You did not do that. You signed him thinking he was going to be your starting quarterback for 4 years.
Then it's a terrible pick.
Am I wrong about that though?
Well, it's a $180 million deal with $100 guaranteed.
Well, yeah, I'm saying no. So that's $25 million a year if you average it out over.
But it's not. Yeah. Listen, maybe they know that Kirk Cousins isn't going to be ready, or something happened with the injury or something like that.
Well, then void the contract like the Bears did with Ogunjobi. I mean, I don't get that then. I mean, that makes
I don't know. It is a shocking pick.
I think the owner made the pick. I don't think it had anything to do with their front office. I think he's got it in his head that that's the way he wants to do it now. They've been so quarterback starved and hungry since Ryan aged out, and I think he just wants to load up on the position and say the hell with everything else.
All right, we can skip Rome Odunze since we covered it, obviously, with Caleb Williams. Do you want to lump 10 and 17 together, or do you want to just do this individually with the quarterback?
I think McCarthy deserves his own attention here. I'm going to tell you something about McCarthy in the last few days. I've not done a 180. I've done a 90-degree turn on him. I am more receptive to the idea that he is going to be a good quarterback than I was, like maybe when we first started, definitely than when we first started talking about the draft. And the reason why I feel that way is, like, I just feel like I'm being overly harsh on him for literally having he hasn't failed at anything yet. Like, I've not seen him, other than the TCU game where he threw a couple interceptions last year, I've not seen him look bad. And I mean, if you just put on the Alabama game and didn't know anything about like draft eligibility or anything else and just watch that playoff game from beginning to end and watch the end of the game, you would think JJ McCarthy is a first round quarterback. I think
he
so,
has the throws. He has the throws all over his film. It's just there's not a lot of them. I was talking to someone
but
today.
There's not a lot of negative plays either, Danny.
No, right, for sure. But he's got NFL players all over the field. Like, you can watch all of his throws, someone told me today, in over 40 minutes, and for most guys it takes like an hour and a half. Like, there's just not as much data.
Does he have NFL players all over the field? He's getting guys drafted, and he's the only one today from Michigan from what I saw tonight, and there'll be a ton tomorrow. But the guys that he threw the ball to, this isn't Ohio State or LSU, right?
No, it's not that. No, absolutely. And, man, look, Kevin O'Connell is a great coach. So this is a very good situation. You got a great coach, a great play caller in Justin Jefferson, and he's apparently a brilliant kid. So it's a pretty damn good situation to go to. Really tough division, but very, very good situation.
It's just interesting to me that we all, I think, believe that Harbaugh has a great handle on the quarterback position and knows quarterbacks and can develop quarterbacks. And he made these statements about McCarthy, and everybody just said, yeah, well, the BS meter is going off with this.
Well, no one that's actually what college coaches do. I mean,
did he do that for his other guys? Did he say that Jenkins is the best defensive lineman in the draft, or that the corner is the best corner? I don't think so. He said this guy's the best quarterback in Michigan history and should have been the first quarterback off the board.
And he went 10th. Let's go to the Jets at 11. They moved back one spot. They took Olu Fashanu, Caleb Williams' high school teammate. To me, I heard that every team is going to have a completely different board on the offensive linemen. That there's just like everyone agrees, very talented class, but no one agrees on consensus. But this is a pretty simple one of, if they've got any shot at salvaging Aaron Rodgers, they need to keep him healthy. So they draft a tackle who they must have liked more than other people. And I like the kid's story and just like the personality. So I was happy to see him picked high, because I thought he could have gone anywhere from 9 to the Bears to like 25 or 28, like, and had like a long day. So I was happy to see him get a high pick just because I thought the story was kind of cool. But, it seems to me all about protecting Aaron Rodgers.
He's a finesse offensive tackle, and that's not for every team. He's not a very good run blocker. You've got Aaron Rodgers, who's 40 years old. Are you worried about how Olu Fashanu blocks for Breece Hall? Not particularly. You just want to make sure that you don't have a repeat of what happened at the beginning of last year. The guy can pass block his ass off. He didn't give up a sack in 2 years.
Right.
Okay, so that tells you everything you need to know about, and it's not like, Penn State 2 years ago at Sean Clifford. They didn't have the most mobile quarterback in college football. So I like to pick a lot for the Jets.
And then the 6th quarterback goes 12th, man.
Oh my God.
What an insane pick.
I don't know. I just said, like, I'm praising Harbaugh on his evaluation of quarterbacks. I don't know if I lost more respect for a human being tonight than Sean Payton.
Yeah, it's so ridiculous.
And the storytelling was just
so I was on the air. I didn't hear
embarrassing.
Any of it.
Adam Schefter comes out with this story about how Sean Payton sees Patrick Mahomes' qualities in Bo Nix, and how he was having Patrick Mahomes flashbacks to when he wanted to draft Mahomes and gave Mahomes these homework assignments when they were going through the draft process with him, and he was getting the same vibes from Nix. And then here comes, I think, Mel Kiper talking about how the accuracy reminds Sean Payton of Drew Brees. So we're getting the 6th quarterback in this draft compared to Drew Brees and Patrick Mahomes by Sean Payton.
That's completely ridiculous. I didn't see any of the coverage of it. I just was like, okay, 6 quarterbacks going in the top 12. At least 2 of these guys are going to be busts. And probably
why would you pay Russell Wilson $38 million to play for another team when your plan is Bo Nix?
I have no idea, man. I have no idea. But I will say, my buddy Ben Heisler with the 13th pick had a 120-1 ticket that the Raiders pick would be a tight end, and he nailed it.
Oh, that is awesome.
Yeah, man. He nailed it. Oh, can I scoop the pick that just went live?
Sure.
Dude, I called this. Chiefs traded up for Xavier Worthy. That is that is such a Chiefs pick. I knew that was going to happen, man. That is such a Chiefs pick. I said that everywhere. Did I say that on this podcast? I hope so.
No, you did not, I don't think. Because I had Worthy in our mock going to Buffalo. But anyways, we'll come back to that. Bowers.
Bowers is listen, the guy, if he's healthy, he's a dynamic freak of nature. It's just
the only thing about it that's a little bit weird to me is I liked Michael Mayer from Notre Dame, and they have him there. But so I guess Bowers is just going to be a slot receiver. Dude. He's going to be a slot receiver.
Yeah, he's going to be a matchup nightmare who technically is a tight end, but he's going to be like Sam Laporta. He's going to get 100 plus. He's going to have 100 catches. Like
look, Nick Saban said it tonight. He thinks he's the most NFL ready player of anybody he coached or coached against last year. And by the way, he had the right tackle that went with the 7th pick in this draft. And he said it about Bowers and not one of his own guys.
All right. So the Saints then take Fuaga from Oregon State at 14 overall. This is the guy who's the mauler run blocker. They're going to plug him in at right tackle, and Alvin Kamara is going to run behind him for like 6.5 yards per carry.
That was the average behind him in college last year, so that stat is right.
I know. The run blocking highlights that this guy has is just. I have nothing more to add other than he's a plug and play right tackle.
Then at 15, NFL record, the first defensive player came off the board, and it was Latu from UCLA, who had 23 and a half sacks, but he has a neck injury. He has a neck question.
Years ago. He's played 2 seasons since the neck injury. I feel like that's an important detail that people don't mention. He didn't qualify. UCLA cleared him. He started at Washington, right?
Yep.
He didn't pass the physical at Washington. UCLA cleared him, and he's played 2 seasons of football. So, unless people think that he's one hit away from his career being over, but everybody's one hit away from their career being over. So, I don't understand.
I don't think that's I disagree. I don't think that's the same thing. I don't know. Obviously, like we're not as privy to all the medical records as anybody else, but when I'm watching the draft coverage live and they're saying the guy would have been a no doubt slam dunk top 10 pick, but people are worried about the neck medical.
But he's had, I hear everybody say the same thing, but what I don't get is that he has had 2 full productive seasons of college football since the neck injury.
Okay, well, if everybody felt the way that you did, he apparently would have been the 8th or 9th pick in the draft, Danny. So they're not looking at this pragmatically like you.
No, for sure. And listen, maybe it'll blow up on him, but it's not like he's coming off a neck injury. 16th pick in the draft, Byron Murphy to the Seahawks. This is a classic thing where everyone's going to say, great pick by Seattle. And it might be, and I like Murphy's tape, but because it's a great pick because he was mocked to go 8 or 9 and they get him at 16. But it's also just possible that the mock drafters are wrong and the GMs are right. And this is more Dave Wanstead's like, this is not an impact interior defensive lineman. And he coached Aaron Donald. So I'm
stunned. He had to do the study on him because Murphy was mocked potentially to the Bears.
Listen, he said he's not a top 10 pick. He said he's not worthy of a top 10 pick.
But the body type with Donald is very similar. That's why I'm surprised to hear him say that. The guy was extremely productive and just moves well for someone of that stature. We've seen those types of fire plug defensive tackles, Donald, Sapp, John Randall, have Hall of Fame careers. So I'm not going to say that the size is discriminatory or you pass on him because you think he's a little bit smaller. But look, I trust Dave on that scouting report and that assessment. So
yeah, but again, middle of the first round, maybe a more appropriate grade. But he was laughing at the idea that he would be a Bear at 9. Dallas Turner, I mean, if you love the mock drafts, Minnesota's draft has to be incredible. You get the guy that people thought was going to go 4 at 10, and then you get the guy that people thought was going to go 8 at 17. Dallas Turner is young, but he's got a ton of upside, and it's a replacement for Danielle Hunter. On paper, Minnesota, to me, had an excellent, excellent draft.
Well, I mean, this was a move potentially, too, to leapfrog Cincinnati because of the Hendrickson trade rumor, and he wants out of there now. So there was maybe a chance that Cincinnati was going to take Turner if he dropped to them at 18. So that's why Minnesota had to move up and make that deal with Jacksonville. I'm underwhelmed by Turner, and I said that when we did our mock draft. I thought that people were giving him kudos just because of the Alabama lineage and the fact that they've pumped out so many guys at his position who have gone on to be really good pros, like Will Anderson last year. But the production just didn't match it. So I'm not as keen on him, but I guess, like you said, 17 is much better value than 7 or 8.
Then it's Amarius Mims. When Joe Burrow is healthy, the Bengals win a ton of games. So they took a very high upside tackle prospect, even though he only has 8 starts at right tackle. I can't hate the pick because when Burrow's healthy, they win. But obviously, this is a very boom or bust pick because the guy has not shown
no doubt
consistent production.
It's honestly the type of pick that, like, before Joe Burrow, when the Bengals would do stuff like this, you would just assume that it was going to blow up in their face.
Right.
And that was the history of the organization. They take swings on guys like this, and they would usually fail. I mean, it is a classic Mike Brown pick in that you think that if the guy gets to where he could be or would be, he has a chance to be the best right tackle in the NFL. He has a chance to be Lane Johnson. He's that good. I mean, the athleticism is insane. He had tightrope ankle surgery. But also there was this weird thing where they would sub him in and out of plays. You never see that with offensive linemen, but they would do that with him. So I don't know if it's a conditioning thing or what, but yeah, there's just very, very little tape of him to go by. 6 starts this year and then the 2 playoff games last year.
Rams were rumored to trade into the top 10. They stand pat. They lost Aaron Donald. They add to the defensive line. They take Jared Verse, a bull rusher, an older guy. He beat up on younger players. I think he's got a high floor. But they pair him with Byron Young, who had a great year after being a 3rd-round pick. So they're trying to repeat history and have a couple of really good edge rushers out there. I can't hate the pick given the obvious need for the team. I think it's pretty decent value at this spot. Like, he's not going to be bad.
I just thought they would want an offensive lineman because of Matthew Stafford's age, and you look at their line, and they don't have really any studs other than Dotson, who had a big breakout year for them last year, and then they paid him. And they got lucky with offensive line injury luck. They didn't the year before. They were devastated by it. So I just thought that would be, given the depth of that position in the draft, something that they did with the 19th pick.
All right, your team, Troy Fautanu. This is a guy, again, who people have said, wide range on people's boards, and he might end up being a guard. What do you think?
Well, Kuiper had him 10th. And he came in for a visit, so there was interest there. We're listing him on the graphic as a guard. Tomlin said at his press conference that they're going to play him at tackle. That's where he played at Washington. He was a left tackle there. He was great last season. Washington won the team award for the best offensive line in college football, and he was their best offensive lineman. They said he could play all 5 positions. Daniel Jeremiah said there was one team in the draft that said he's the best center. But the Steelers are saying he's a tackle, even though they need a center. There was also, and the reason why when we were getting closer to this pick, I didn't think the Steelers would do it. He got flagged for I think, a degenerative knee issue at the combine. And that came up, and Albert Breer wrote about that. And there was some question about, I guess the thought among NFL teams was it's not a short-term issue, but it's a long-term one. Well, that doesn't, what's long-term? That's a subject. Is it 5 years from now? Is it 3? I mean, that kind of gives me a little bit of pause, but I mean, the dude was awesome. It was outstanding there. And he'll probably play,
If you want a guest on him for your show, Brock Heward is big on him.
Yeah.
Brock Heward's got good things to say about him.
I would play him at left tackle, and I would keep Jones at right tackle and not try to play musical chairs.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, Jones played right tackle last year. Why would you ask this guy to go play a different position? Keep him where he's good.
Chop Robinson, this felt like a great fit, given all of the injuries and what happened to the Dolphins defensive line last year. This felt to me like an excellent fit for team need and player with upside. He's obviously an imperfect player in terms of production. I know you've invoked Micah Parsons because of edge and Penn State and all of that, but we just saw what happened to them last year. This felt like a perfect draft pick for the upside of Chop Robinson.
I just wish that Fangio had stuck around there because he's got such a great reputation as a defensive coordinator, one of the best in the NFL, probably right behind Spagnuolo in Kansas City at this point. And I would have liked to have seen him with a chess piece like Robinson. Because, I said I think he's going to be the best defensive player in the draft. I should have qualified that. I do think that some of it has to do with the fact that he goes to the right place because he's not to me a cookie cutter type defensive player. The situation he goes to matters, and there are edge rushers there and pass rushers in Miami that can help him maybe move to inside or put him on. I mean, he can literally play, I think, anywhere up front.
All right, Quinion Mitchell, the kid from Toledo who ran the 4.33. Eagles hadn't selected a corner in the first round since 2002. We talked about it all last year, what a disaster their pass rush was. Crazy speed.
And their secondary aged in dog years. Bradbury had a horrible year. Slay doesn't look like the same guy. Remember they cut him and then they brought him back like right away before last season.
This was this need, upside, speed, all of those things.
I said it on the podcast. Like you go to Toledo and you're playing against, for the most part, scrubs in the MAC, even though that league's put out good players like Ben.
But he crushed it at the Senior Bowl.
Yeah, but you know what? Like I've thought about that a lot. Isn't that overrated? You had
but I'm just saying. I think it's more important for a guy from Toledo.
Right, but I'm just like, I don't know. I mean, to me, I would not want to be hypnotized by what guys did in practice settings. And now
I agree. I just think it matters more for a guy from the MAC.
Yeah, it's tough because it's harder to grade his tape because of the quality of competition.
Correct.
That he went against. So he didn't give up a touchdown all last year. He had a 4 interception game the year before that when teams were still throwing at him. I think at 22, it's a good pick by Philly.
Brian Thomas Jr. goes 23 to the Jaguars, who traded around to get it. They obviously had a huge need at receiver, and I'm happy for Trevor Lawrence, frankly, that he gets this guy. So
I'm starting to sound – I want to give this pick credit too, but now I feel like I'm too positive on these picks, which I hate that in the draft analysis when everybody loves every pick that gets made. I probably should have been harder on Caleb Williams to start the podcast to even things out.
That would have been rude.
You've got Evan Ingram, who's a vacuum cleaner who sucks in 100 balls a year now in that offense. And this is the guy, his 20-yard, like the 20-yard sprint, not the 40-yard, the 20-yard sprint, he was the fastest guy. The fastest. I think that includes Worthy. And he's like 6'3". He had 17 touchdowns last year. That's the most in college football since Devontae Smith at Alabama. I mean, I love the top 3 guys, but I believe this dude's got a chance now in this offense to be a Pro Bowl receiver and a fantasy football darling over the next few years, a touchdown maker for them. So I like that pick for Jacksonville after losing Ridley. I think he'll be better than Ridley in the next 2 years.
I thought this next pick was a pretty obvious one. I was here in the room with a bunch of Lions people, obviously, in Detroit, and I was like, it was either going to be Terrion Arnold, or Wiggins, the cornerback from Alabama. Like when they traded up, they need defense. Their offense is so loaded And this guy's big, long. He's tough. He plays press.
Who are we talking about here?
Terrion Arnold.
Yeah, okay.
The corner from Bama, who the Lions traded up for to take it the 24th overall pick. Like, guys in the room were talking about an offensive player, and I was like, no, are you crazy? You guys are going to take a defensive player. And this he's big, he's physical, he feels like a guy that fits the whole machismo thing of the coach and everything like that. Had 5 picks last year. It was just it felt, I didn't know if they liked Wiggins or Arnold more. They went with this guy.
Yeah, you have to take Arnold. I mean, Wiggins is too small to tackle, in my opinion. That's going to be the rub on him. He can cover, but he's just so tiny. He can run. I think he's got I don't know how he makes up for how small he is. He's like the same size as you. Like, I just don't see how that's going to really translate great to the NFL. Arnold universally was viewed as the number 1 corner in the draft. I mean, like, there were mocks where he was
the Toledo guy, Mitchell.
Well, but I'm saying, like, there were mocks where he was going to go off the board to Indy at 14, maybe even going to go as soon as like 12 or 13, depending on what the Raiders and Broncos did, what the Raiders did with their pick. Minnesota, if they didn't make the McCarthy trade. So I think that the Cam Sutton situation in Detroit, their secondary got burnt. So to get a guy that had like top 15 potential where they did, having to move up for him, I thought was the right call.
All right. So Jordan Morgan goes to the Packers. More youth on their offense. They were the youngest offense in the NFL last year. He's probably going to be a guard, and they had serious interior offensive line issues. This feels like a very safe pick. I thought that they were maybe more likely to go defense than offense, frankly. But a guy who he started 37 games in college, and he's probably going to play guard in the NFL. So to me, this is one of the most conservative picks that any team made in the first round.
I thought they were going to take DeJean. I thought that was going to be their pick here at 25. And get the defensive and get the corner who, you can either use him as just a straight outside corner, or you can move him around. Can he be a Kyle Hamilton or something like that? Some teams think he can be. I didn't watch him enough to really give you a true opinion on that. Also, the other thing about DeJean is, with the new kickoff rules, is he going to be a weapon that helps you win games there too? Because he's a great return man. So I was just surprised that they went with another young, more youth on offense. I know it's up front and not at a skill position, but Jordan Morgan, I thought they could have trade back. I mean, I know it's easier said than done, but don't take a guy that's like the 45th best player in the draft with the 25th pick.
We are obviously an NFL podcast, so we're talking a lot about this from the NFL team's perspective. Is there a more obvious draft pick for need than Tampa loses Ryan Jensen and they draft Graham Barton? Like, centers don't go in the first round that often. They lost a great center. He's going to play center. They have Baker Mayfield. This is like the most obvious plug and play starting draft pick. We lost the guy we needed to draft a guy in the history of draft picks. This was telegraphed.
Well, yeah, if he got there, and there were, my Steelers were a team that was linked to Barton.
Well, yeah, and it could have been Powers Johnson. I'm not saying like this guy, but I'm saying this need for this team.
Yep. Yo, no doubt. I mean, they needed an offensive line. They could have gone defensive line. Bowles always is looking to add defense. So you're like, they could have lost any number of their 3 stars in the offseason. Winfield, Evans, Mayfield. They went for 3 for 3. They kept all 3. And so now they replace former All-Pro center with a guy that everyone seems to think he's just going to play center and it's going to go swimmingly. In centers, as that ESPN graphic showed, if you take one in the first round, they're almost always good if they're good enough to go in the top 30 of the draft. He hasn't played center since the COVID year, and it was only 5 games. So we'll see. He played left tackle for 3 years, if it's really going to be a seamless transition to an entirely new position.
So the next pick I didn't like, this guy Darius Robinson from Missouri. Maybe he's going to just be inside, but he did a lot of edge. He played a lot of edge in college, and the guy barely broke 5 seconds in the 40-yard dash. So maybe he's an interior defensive lineman in the NFL. Okay, fine, but there's not as much production there from his time at Missouri. They obviously have a terrible defensive line in Arizona, but it felt like a little bit of a reach for where he's going to end up.
Is he a 3-4 defensive end like a J.J. Watt? I mean, is that what they're thinking with him?
You know, possible.
I know the Steelers had him in for a visit, and I know that there was some interest. I don't think they thought, they wouldn't have taken him in the first round. Maybe if he fell into the second, they would ponder that. But clearly the team I cover doesn't have an edge issue or weakness. They've got Watt and Highsmith, and yet they still had interest in him, potentially maybe as like a Cam Hayward replacement. So I'm guessing that's where he'll play in Arizona. And that I think is throwing a bone to your defensive coach. You had 2 first-round picks. You manipulated the board last year. You've moved around. I think they want to give him that defense needs all the help it can get. And I think they wanted to give him a reinforcement there with this pick. But I agree with you. Like, nothing about Robinson screams this guy is going to be a good player.
All right. So we're on the 28th pick here on First and Pod. And I called this one, man. Xavier Worthy. They traded up to get him. They have Hollywood Brown, but that's only on a 1-year deal. This is Hollywood Brown replacement and speed for Patrick Mahomes while they try to win another Super Bowl while Travis Kelce's still on the team. I love this pick.
I'm just like, so we started this pod taping it, and we're live on YouTube, but for the people that are going to listen to this on Friday or Saturday or whatever, we started taping this before this, you in the middle of us talking, you got all excited about this. The Bills made a trade with the Chiefs. So the Chiefs could come up and take a wide receiver. They allegedly, reportedly, did not want to trade Stephon Diggs to Kansas City. They were going to let him go anywhere else. And yet they were cool with Kansas City going to their spot, taking a player at the position that they want. I'm just completely flummoxed by that, man.
And they traded out of the first round entirely. Because they also didn't make a pick at 32. And
I'm just so confused by this.
Yeah, that's very bizarre.
This is pardon the pun, this is your chief competition. And you just let them take a guy at the position you need.
Very bizarre. Great pick. Do you like the pick for the Chiefs, though? Just
yes.
quickly? Yeah,
yes,
okay,
I
great.
do.
He is
he's more than just a runner. He's not John Ross.
But it's such a fun highlight package, man. The dude, he will go over the middle and just get rocked at 165 pounds and bounce back up. 29, Cowboys make a trade. Tyler Guyton, the kid from Oklahoma, only played 14 games, only started 14 games at tackle, but they talk about him like a plug-and-play right tackle in the NFL. I'm not sure if that's true.
He also, I think, started as a tight end at TCU. So this is all in for the Cowboys, huh? Tyler Guyton, a guy who didn't give up a sack last year. That's good, I guess. But is not seen as a high upside guy and is strictly a right tackle. Your version of all in is taking like the 6th best offensive tackle with the 29th pick. Way to go, Jerry Jones.
Nate Wiggins goes to Baltimore with the 30th pick in the draft. You talked about how is he ever going to tackle. I don't know, but the dude can certainly run. He ran a 4.28 40.
And the Ravens they know how to draft defensive backs. That's their ethos. That's their MO.
They took him over Cooper DeJean.
They took him over DeJean. Well, they have Hamilton there, so I guess they probably just wanted someone that was
sure.
a lot.
Yeah, for sure.
They want somebody to run with those Bengals wide receivers is what they want, and so at least for one more year, and the best receivers in the NFL. So yeah, I mean he can do it, and if a team's gonna develop him and coach him up and get him to do those physical things, I would trust the Ravens to do that more than 99% of other franchises.
All right, let's do 2 quick ones here. Niners take Ricky Pearsall. Ayuk is maybe being traded. Debo's maybe being traded at some point. He had that ridiculous one-handed catch, one of the best college football catches I've ever seen. Feels like this is insurance for losing a skill position player.
Well, I still think I'm going to go back to what I had heard this week. I still think that if the 49ers and Steelers got on a phone call with each other, the Steelers would really think about trading the 49ers next year's first round pick, the 2025 first round pick. But the other hang up there is you'd have to give the team that's trading for Ayuk permission to negotiate a deal with him and get that hammered out before the trade got finalized, which in retrospect, it's amazing how quickly Tennessee and Philadelphia were able to work that out a couple of years ago when the A.J. Brown trade got made, where he got sent while the pick was on the clock and the contract got hammered out too. So, yeah, I mean, you're right. It is insurance. You know, they've got Juwan Jennings there too, who had a great Super Bowl and is no slouch as a third receiver. So it does make you think that there's another deal coming with the 49ers when you see a move like that.
So this is the Chiefs pick to Buffalo and Buffalo to Carolina. So Buffalo will start the second round. Xavier Legette goes to play with Bryce Young. I mean, if this dude works hard, he's got all the physical traits in the world. He's 225 pounds and he ran a sub 4.40. People have invoked the name DK Metcalf if he puts it all together, but he's very inconsistent on tape.
So I'm guessing then the Bills want Ladd McConkey. Is that what we can discern from this, or A.D. Mitchell? That's who they're targeting here, and they were fine with Xavier Worthy and Ricky Pearsall and Xavier Legette all getting picked. That
I guess so. Yeah,
knew that there was going to be a run on wide receivers, but not the wide receiver that they covet. Is how I.
That there were a bunch of guys on their board and they needed more ammunition. Yeah.
And the reason why I'll circle back to Mitchell is I thought this might be a connect the dots thing. Kirk Herbstreit, before the draft started, was asked, who do you think is going to win Offensive Rookie of the Year? And he went with Mitchell over everybody. And so it would make sense. Mitchell, who's got huge upside and great physical traits, you pair him with Josh Allen, and he's the number one wide receiver in that offense. He could put up crazy numbers next year. So keep an eye on that to start day 2 tomorrow night.
That's a great call. This has been a lot of fun, man. I've been broadcasting for like 7.5 hours straight at this point, something ridiculous. So I'm going to get out of here, but
you're just going to bed, or you're going to go party some more?
Hey man, we did 52 minutes. I said between 45 minutes and an hour.
All right.
Man, two of my guys are being cool about it. Speaks is old, so he's tired.
Speaks has got to go do an interview with like the play-by-play voice of the Minnesota Twins. Okay, so that's why he's on your ass. He's got to get all his ducks in a row for that.
That's right.
EVP
that's right.
interview tomorrow.
That's right. I'll pass that along to him. Thank you. It's Pony. He says go interview the Twins play-by-play voice. Thank you to Spencer Ray, our producer, everyone watching on YouTube. He's Andrew Fillipponi. He'll be talking about an offensive lineman on his show tomorrow. I'll be talking about Caleb Williams and Rome Odunze. This is First and Pod. Peace. All right. See you.